comedy, what do you enjoy about it?
I think over the years, like obviously as you start out just as a kid, I love to laugh. And then as I sort of developed my comedy taste or my sense of humor, I really started enjoying like the art and like the craft of like joke writing and like how they get into jokes, how they like mislead you or how they, go this way or that way and bring it all back together. I think that's what sort of draws me to it, because I think it takes just a very interesting mind to be able to take you on this journey and then get you to, really come back and laugh at the end.
In that 10-minute stand-up routine that you performed in Montreal, what was involved with creating that?
I was going to go to this Montreal Film Just for Laughs comedy festival, and I'd always wanted to go. And so somebody was like, do you want to like talk to somebody at the festival and see if like there's some stuff you want to do? And so I just was thinking like, oh, I'm going to go to like different things. And they were like, would you want to host a show? And I was like, oh, that'd be cool. Like just like, put your name on it. You get to go to a show and pick out some comedians. And then they were like, okay, cool. And you'll just do like 5 to 10 up top. And I was like, wait, that's not what I was thinking. But then I was like, you know what? I'll do it. Like, I was like, I'll do 5 minutes.
And how much notice did they give you?
This was like a month and a half.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a while. So it wasn't like,
but
it was
that's
like
still
the next
not
week.
No,
it's not
doing
it's
something
not
like
long.
that. Yeah.
And then I also procrastinated. Early on, one of my buddies who's a stand-up told me like, just start writing stuff. Write stuff down and like you'll have it and you can like develop it and like sometimes another thought will come. So I go to my notes folder and I start trying to put together 10 minutes, 5 minutes, which stretched to 10. And I had all these jokes and I was just like stuck. And I was like on the internet, I was like on YouTube watching interviews, and I watched a Seth Rogen interview where he was talking about when he started doing stand-up.
And that had a big difference for you in comedy, watching that interview, right?
Yeah, because he started talking about when he was 13, he was going up and he was doing, adult comedy shows, and he was tell jokes that were like adult jokes, and sometimes they wouldn't land, and came off stage and a older comedian said to him like, how old are you? He was like, I'm 13. He was like, well, write about 13-year-old stuff. And that's when I was like, okay, I can write about basketball stuff. I can write about sports. That's what I know, and that's what people are gonna associate me with. So I scrapped everything, rewrote everything, and then went up and did it a couple times in LA, and then went to Montreal and did it.
And when you rewrite everything, like how long is that process?
This was like a day and a half, maybe straight, like till like 3 a.m, and then slept for a couple hours, woke back up and started writing again, just because I was like under the clock.
Yeah.
So that was like kind of a panic, and it all came together. But I had some buddies that I sent stuff to, and they would send stuff back, and I'd change it and do all that. So I definitely had like some help, but I put a lot of time into that one.
Oh, and you said that first night in Montreal was the scariest night of your life.
Yeah.
Why?
Everybody kept saying like, oh, does like basketball help? Like, did it help you prepare for this? And I was just like, not even remotely, like in the least bit. Every comedian has bombed. So you never think you're above bombing.
Right.
Like, certainly not me. If Jerry Seinfeld and Dave Chappelle and all these guys talk about bombing, then it's always in the back of my mind that it's going to happen, I just don't know when.
So I don't know if you'd be willing to do this, but on your phone, the notes field, any chance you'd be willing to like, open it up and say something you have in there and like how you've been kind of toying in your head with
I don't know how many things are like PG at this point. These are all thoughts that I haven't fleshed out.
Right, well, so that's what I'm talking about. Like, what's an example of a thought that you put in there that you now will at some point work on?
I was watching this thing and I okay, this is a bad one, but it's like the one I can read. I was watching this thing and I was trying to think like what like vibe this lady gives off, and I love who does this really well. Like Weekend Update on Saturday Night Live does that really well, where Colin Jost will be like so and so, who gives off the vibe, or he like who reminds you of your uncle, something like that. And they're able to equate that.
SNL your entire life,
yeah,
every single
life.
episode.
I've seen way too many episodes. But I was watching this thing and I was like trying to think of what it was, and I was like, oh, a good thing for somebody else if I ever come across somebody like this is she gives off the vibe that she leaves way too detailed Yelp reviews. Because I don't know anybody that leaves Yelp reviews, but obviously tons of people do, and sorry if anybody here leaves Yelp reviews, but I read them and then I'm like, why did I read that and give it any validity? Because I don't know anybody that leaves Yelp reviews. So
Right.
why would I trust somebody who does leave Yelp reviews?
So you have that, and so what's the process in like taking that to making it on stage ready? Should you determine that you eventually want to use it?
Like, I think it would be just that, to where it's like, you would try to like set a joke up where you say you don't have any friends that leave Yelp reviews. You sort of start this whole arc, right? Like, or you could start with that and then sort of launch. That just gives you a platform to launch into a lot more punchlines, and then hopefully somewhere you can bring it back to the beginning. You could bring it back to somebody leaving a Yelp review about my comedy set or something like that. This is just
Right.
Again, this is the first thought I've had about this, but that's what I like about this folder. Is like sometimes I can go back and read that, and then if I'm sitting on an airplane, I can just have like a 5-minute thought to myself of like, where could I go with that? Sometimes it goes nowhere. Sometimes after 5 minutes, I'm like, that was so stupid. Like I'll never use that, but I leave it in there.
And you have buddies that you'll bounce ideas off of too, right?
Yeah, and like a good friend of mine, Neil Brennan, is actually doing a show in New York right now that's incredible.
And he sends you stuff to punch up sometimes.
Yeah. He's given me a lot of advice, but he's like one of those guys that I have always been able to like send stuff to, and he's sort of taught me how to like get to that point. I'll send him something, and like instead of just sending his like change back, he'll tell me why. I learned early on was like making it concise. Take out all the fluff, like get right to the point, set up, punchline. You know, you don't need to like take them on this wild tangent or use a big word because it makes you sound smarter.
Yeah.
Just get to it and like deliver that punchline.
What was involved with prepping for Alec Baldwin's roast?
Jeff Ross has a roast show in Montreal, a live roast show, and he asked me if I'd come up and do one. So I went and did one just for fun. It's like a tournament, it's like a bracket, you know, and everybody gets to the final. So yeah, I basically did like an exhibition before the final with somebody. And then he just came up to me after the show and he was like, yo, we're doing Alec Baldwin on Comedy Central in like 2 months. Would you do it? And I was like, okay, I'll do it. So I grew up like watching those two and loved them. So as soon as I started writing like literally right away.
Oh, did you?
Oh yeah, right away. Because I was like, I got 2 months, like I have to have like good jokes.
And the pressure's on for that one. I mean, they're big
absolutely.
time folks.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I started writing, started sending stuff off to friends, and then finally got to a place where I had, I would say 5 jokes for everybody. And then I would go up in LA, Comedy Store, Laugh Factory, Improv, and I would just be like, hey guys, I'm working on this like jokes for this Comedy Central roast, and the audiences were great. So I just like worked on it. I probably went up 10 times before I went on stage, maybe less. And I just figured out what worked, what didn't, my pauses, my timing, my all that. And it just made me so much more confident when I was going up.
You have a favorite joke?
Yeah, like I have a favorite, yeah, I definitely have a favorite joke, yeah. Some of my Caitlyn Jenner jokes were a lot of fun. Actually, yeah, I can't really tell that because they cut it from the broadcast because somebody didn't want it in there. So I should probably not say that one. But the Robert De Niro one, I was really worried about.
You apologized right after.
Yeah. I was like, because we were all in this room like waiting, and he comes in super late and just walks in, shakes everybody's hand, doesn't really say anything, just kind of shakes everybody's hand. I was like, whoa, this guy's intimidating. Like,
really?
Like, oh yeah, big time. And so as soon as I said it, I shook his hand, but I didn't really talk to him. So I just kind of like went with that on the fly. Like, nice, big fan, nice to meet you.
Were you going through in your head like whether or not to?
No, I was going to say it. No, I couldn't. I didn't come all that way not to say it.
Tell about Mortal Media.
Yeah, so Mortal, I started with my business partner, Ryan Khalil.
Who played in the NFL for a long time.
Played in the NFL. Went to USC, really good at football, played in the NFL for a long time, but his true love is film and TV, and he went to USC to go to film school, and then he was so good at football that the football team was like, all right, we're not doing film school, we're just concentrating on football. But we both kind of had these various projects, for years. He had interned at, he was legendary. And I had done like stuff with Funny or Die. I had done, all this stuff. And so we met one day and we were just like, hey, we have all these things. We want to do sort of the same things. He's more a little bit in like the fanboy, like comic book genre, and I'm more comedy. But we just decided to do this together. And we really wanted to do it in a way where we sat down and we were like, would meet with people, meet with producers, writers, directors, whoever would sit down and meet with us, and sort of prove to them that like this is something that we really enjoy and we're passionate about. It's not just like a thing where it's like, oh, let's start a production company and slap our names on it. Like just, get people to like give us some stuff and have this sort of like vanity project. We wanted it to really come about it the right way. And it took time, which we were willing to spend. And, now we finally have things that are really, really coming down and being ready to go.
And a big one here in Brooklyn's getting ready to start shooting for Apple, right?
Yeah, coincidentally, we have a show, our first show really that we've done, Hello Tomorrow, about to shoot here in Brooklyn. That's one I'm very, very excited for people to see, sort of like a sci-fi dramedy show that started from an idea that my business partner had, that Ryan had, and she went and shot this short just because we were like, let's do it.
Yeah.
He talked to me about it, and I was like, yeah, of course, like let's go do it. And he did an unbelievable job, from top to bottom. He's just like he's like the brains of this operation. He's just like he like gets it, and like now being retired, he's just like all in on it, and it's amazing to have a partner like that.
How'd you find out Apple signed on?
It's kind of like a long process. Like we had partnered with somebody else and took it around, and so you know that it's a possibility, and then I'm trying to think of this one. I think maybe it was a phone. I think Ryan maybe called me, or sometimes it's an email. I forget. Yeah. We've been fortunate to sell some things. Some things don't go.
Right.
Some things we're still working on. Some things are about to go. But we've had some success and been fortunate, and we're just trying to keep that ball rolling.
And White Man Can't Jump might be an example of this, but just the amount of time it takes to bring ideas into reality.
Absolutely. Especially, obviously with COVID, it slowed everything down. We had good momentum right before that. But then sort of kept the ball rolling a little bit through COVID, but we've been talking about this for, I think, maybe over 4 years. So it was a good lesson for me early on because I didn't know much about the business side of things, and I'm glad we started a long time ago because now it's starting to happen.
We had somebody tape a question for you, actually.
Oh boy.
Hi Blake, it's Nikki Glazer. Good to see you. I'm not seeing you, but you're seeing me. It's good to be seen by you. Okay, my question for you is, why are you funny? Because you are really funny, and it's infuriating because generally a sense of humor, developing that comes from the fact that you have nothing else going for you. You're not tall and handsome and good at sports, and I'm just wondering what made you develop a sense of humor, you think? Yeah, I'll see you in my DMs.
I just grew up loving comedy. I think being the younger sibling, the youngest in the family, just like that was kind of like how I like got attention, was like trying to do funny things. Probably my friends growing up had something to do with it for sure. We would all just try to make each other laugh all the time. Even my friends today, we just like kind of like run bits all the time. And it probably is so annoying for other people that are around us, but it makes us laugh and we have fun with it.
Your parents. First, explain the stay tattoo.
That's sort of just like an ode to my parents. Like I think my parents like instilled in my brother and I both like the right values, the right morals. They are the right type of people. They're like the people that like I think I aspire to be like. So that stay tattoo is sort of just like a reminder to like just stay in that lane. Like you have the right tools. You've been taught the right things. Like that's sort of my reminder for them without just getting like their names tattooed. You know what I mean?
Okay, so what about that touches you?
I watched my parents sacrifice for so long, whether it was like working crazy hours or working extremely hard, having 2 jobs each, just to give us everything that we needed. just what we needed. You know, it wasn't like they were just like, oh, just work to like give them all this extra stuff. Like they were working as hard as they possibly could to take care of us and make sure that we had the right tools to get to where we want to get to. And even since I was a kid, like my biggest like thing was always like trying to pay them back. And you know, being able to do that from like a financial standpoint is different than like, you know, making them proud or showing them that they're, you know, you're grateful for what they did.
And it's almost not till later in life, and maybe when you're a parent of your own, that probably you truly appreciate their sacrifices.
For sure. There's times where I'm like with my kids and I'm like, man, I need to call my parents and tell them like what a great job they did. Like as a parent, you sort of realize that like you're just like trying to make decisions in real time, like the best decision possible in real time. And as a kid, you think, oh, my parents know everything. Like they have this all planned out, or at least I did. So, you know, you realize how hard parenting is sometimes. And I just always like try to make sure I give my parents like the props that they, you know, of the job they did.
They were both educators.
Mm-hmm.
Why decide to homeschool you then?
I think because they saw how the what's the term, like they saw how the sausage was made. You know, they saw the inside of the Oklahoma public, and not just Oklahoma, but they saw the inside of a public school system. And there's great teachers in public school systems that are just set up to fail.
Right.
Not fail, but they're just set up to not be able to utilize the abilities or the talents or the skills that they have, just because there's, you know, funding or whatever it may be, classrooms that are too crowded, whatever it is. The public school system sometimes in certain areas, it does the kids and the teachers a disservice. My mom, you know, took the reins and was like, I'm going to teach them, you know, how I think they should be taught.
When your parents choose to give up that salary to homeschool you and your brother Taylor, I believe they start a side hustle trophy business out of the house. You and your brother really weren't feeling that, were you?
No. There were certain aspects of it that were okay or a little bit more fun, I guess.
What were those?
Well, like I didn't mind building the trophies. Like that was more fun than like we would do everything. We would cut, like for, you know, the trophies, there's like columns in the trophies, or it's just a single column. We would get giant boxes of columns and be in our garage and be cut. My dad would cut the columns, and it was like an assembly line. My mom would take it out of the box, hand him the thing, he would cut it, he would pass it to Taylor, Taylor would dust it off, I would take it, put it in the box. And it was just like over the same thing over and over and over for literally felt like 7 hours. Right. You know, it probably wasn't that long, but it definitely wasn't that long. But it was just part of what we had to do, you know, was help out the family.
Taylor was saying, you know, most kids are excited at the end of the season if you win to get a trophy, and he's like, we could have cared less about that part.
Yeah, the trophies were just kind of like you just get them, and then sometimes we just go take them apart and put the parts back in the trophy shop.
How about the hardest part of being coached by your dad?
I think at the time, the hardest part was that he knew me better than anybody, and he knew how to get me going. He knew how to like push the right buttons, and I felt like he was just always on me. As soon as I left high school, I was just like, man, like I'm so thankful for that, because I'm now here, and nobody else has been able to get those things out of me, you know, the way he did. But he was so good at it, because as soon as we left like the gym or left practice or whatever it was, maybe the drive home might be a little weird. But like as soon as we got home, he was just like, he was dad, you know? So he did a great job of like balancing those two.
To what extent was there ever a conversation you had with him where, you know, since those days where you like truly kind of conveyed the appreciation for that?
I've definitely conveyed that several times. You know, just like sometimes I'll just text him randomly and just tell him like how thankful I am. But definitely like, you know, around when I got drafted, I think maybe that Father's Day, I've had those conversations with him. So I hope he knows.
Your dad's black, mom's white. Mm-hmm. What do you think you learned because of that growing up?
A lot. I learned from them to just kind of like rise above things. Like, you don't always have to give people the reaction they want. A lot of times people are sometimes saying things just to get a reaction. You know, obviously there's hate in a lot of people's hearts, and people that choose to say or write or whatever, you know, some of these racial things. I think that they're looking to get a rise out of somebody, and my parents were so good at just, they were fine, they were good. Nobody was like rattling their love or what they had.
Was there ever an instance that you recall where they conveyed that?
You know, there was times, especially early on, where I didn't realize something was happening until I was older. You know, and I remember my mom. We had a conversation I had a conversation with my mom about it, and my brother, where she was telling us things that like people would say to her, and like, I don't know if this was just me and my brother being like, oh yeah, you know, but like we both sort of remember these things, but at the time when you're like 6 years old and like 9 years old, like you're not really thinking like, oh, this person, like this had sort of like either a racial undertone or it was sort of blatantly racist. There was just times where my mom people would say things to my mom, not knowing that she was married to a black man and her kids were mixed. And she would just kind of, not that she would be like, oh yeah, she would just kind of like just dead it, you know what I mean? In like in a way where she wasn't condoning, and she wasn't, you know, all up in arms like yelling at people. And part of that was probably because we were around, and you know, she didn't want to just like blow up a spot.
You do remember noticing that she was treated better by police than your dad was.
Yeah, I mean, I think like not even just police. I remember, you know, being in the car or being at like a gas station. You know, my dad and my brother would always go into like a gas station, and he would like get something, and you could just see how people would treat my dad. I remember one time like a gas station clerk was like kind of like questioning me and my brother, like, "Are you guys good?" And we were like, yeah, and they was like, where's your dad? And we were like, right there. And he was like kind of like looking at us, and like, I didn't really think that much of it. I thought it was a weird interaction, you know? Yeah. As a kid, you can kind of sense that.
Right.
But you don't realize why until you think about it when you're older, and you're like, oh, he thought my dad kidnapped us. You know what I mean? And there's like things like that where it's just not just like such like outwardly blatant racism. But it's just like things where you realize later on that people don't know how to handle certain situations.
And how true is it that a girl you were once interested in dating in high school told you she wasn't allowed to date you?
Yeah, that's true. That's really the only time I ever heard that. And what's weird is I was just kind of like, okay. You know, I didn't like really make a big deal out of it.
Did she say why?
She basically said her dad wouldn't let her date somebody that was black. Pretty straight up, and when I think about it, it was pretty bold of her. For some reason, growing up, I just kind of thought that's how it was. Like now, I think we all are so used to having this conversation, and it's been at the forefront of so many things, especially recently. And with social media and all this stuff, things, you hear the stories and things move around and people get sort of condemned. But unfortunately, a lot of times when I was growing up, I just was like, that's just how it is.
Right.
You know, especially in a place that's a little less progressive than, say, LA or New York, I guess.
Right, and you grew up in Oklahoma. So I was talking to your brother yesterday, and he was telling me you geek out on like anything nutrition related. Mm-hmm. You obviously have this podcast, The Pursuit of Healthiness. On the health and wellness front, outside of the obvious, what really interests you?
Outside of the health and wellness?
I mean, outside of kind of the obvious stuff, what interests you in the health and wellness front?
I sort of recently have been super into biohacking. aspect of health and wellness, just because I think there's so much potential there for like people to literally change the course of their lives like dramatically. You know, people are going to start living longer. I think when you say reverse aging, people kind of like go nuts because it sounds so insane, but you'll be able to slow down aging. There are, I guess, some things where you, I guess, technically, and people who are much, much smarter than me and understand this better can obviously explain this better, but you will be able to sort of reverse aging at some point. And I think that's so interesting, like the biomechanics of things and cell and DNA breakdown and just how modern medicine hopefully can move forward.
In what ways are you starting to get into that?
Honestly, just research,
Okay.
not necessarily doing it myself.
Yeah.
I kind of have to be pretty careful with like, you know, what I put in my body. Like
Yeah.
I never want to take something that I haven't fully researched and will know like what's gonna, you know,
Right.
be on a drug test or not. So I stay pretty safe in terms of like things that I take, but I have started to listen to a lot of different podcasts or read books or articles or studies on all that stuff.
But on that front and what you put into your body, tell about these food sensitivity tests you'll take and how that was also partly responsible for reducing the amount of eggs you eat.
Early on, I would take these food sensitivity tests, and one year it was like eggs was in the red. And so anything that's in the red, like you have to sort of like really cut out of your diet or really reduce. And I eat eggs every morning.
Yeah.
And so it kind of changed my thought process. And what I learned over time with these food sensitivity tests, it wasn't necessarily that like, oh, you're just born with this sensitivity. It's that the thing that you eat the most is just your body produces acid to break down, your stomach produces acid to break down these foods. And when you eat something a lot, it's trying to produce enough acid to break down this certain type of food. And when it can't break it all down, some of that seeps through your gut. That is what makes you sort of sensitive in like a very dumbed down way of like explaining that, I guess. I really learned that most of this stuff is about variety, making sure you don't just eat the same thing over and over. If you eat grilled chicken, broccoli, and brown rice every single meal, you will be sensitive to those things after a while, and your body won't be running as efficiently as possible. So that's like what I learned the most about the food sensitivity test. Since then, I also have learned that some tests, you have to kind of be careful. Some tests are just completely, you know, bullshit, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
So you do have to be careful about which test you're getting, because it's sort of like, you know, it's a moneymaker.
The deal with you and microwaves is what?
It's terrible for your food. Not only are you taking a good amount of the nutrition out of food, but you're also putting things in that I don't think were necessarily meant to, or doing things to the food that I don't think were necessarily meant to be digesting or putting into our bodies. If I had my way, I wouldn't even I wouldn't even have a microwave in my house, but I have one.
So you grew up in Oklahoma in the 90s, and yet your mom was having you drink like green barley even back then. So she was well ahead of her time on all fronts. But like explain just how strict you are with your diet in season, and then how over time you've learned the need to balance it and give yourself flexibility in the off season.
Yeah, my mom, I think I always describe my mom as like as being close to a nutritionist as without having the certification. Like she was always reading like a nutrition book, always, you know, trying new things. We would go to the health food store growing up. We had like the healthy cereals. Our house was the house that friends didn't want to spend the night at because of the meals the next morning, or like.
Right, Josh, I heard, didn't eat a vegetable the first 15 years of his life.
Josh was not a vegetable guy. We tried to get him to drink the barley juice one time, and he just, I think he might have almost thrown up. But
that being your longtime childhood
one of
friend.
my best friends since we were 7. She was just ahead of her time, and for me it was just early on. Like during the season, I was so strict, and then I realized that I had to like sort of pick and choose my spots. Like if I come home after a game and I'm just like tired and I want to eat pizza, like I'll eat pizza. I never say like, oh, I don't eat any dairy, or I don't eat any gluten. I try to limit some of those things sometimes. Every now and then I have to just like do what you want to do with your diet, just to sort of keep myself sane.
Name all the injuries that you can remember getting over the years.
Like in college, I dislocated my kneecap Then I tore my meniscus in the same year. My rookie year, I had like a crack in the bottom of my patella. I had to go in and take that out. That was like the first big surgery I had. Tore my meniscus playing for USA basketball. My elbow got infected because they had to drain it because like I had bursitis, which I would always like play through. It wasn't really an injury. Got infected, so I had to have surgery, so I missed time for that. I tore quad tendon. I tore a ligament in the bottom of my hand. I'm sorry, in the bottom of my toe, not in my hand. The bottom of my toe. Broke my hand. 2 more meniscus. I think that's it.
What was the? You're smiling.
So many.
What was the? But I mean, it says a lot also that I mean, had you not? I'm going to ask you about this momentarily, but had you not reoriented? Yeah, I think you reoriented your thinking on this, but it says a lot. You were able to get through them and continue playing. But like, what was the toughest period for you amid all the injuries?
I think it was like around the time when I tore the ligament in the bottom of my toe because I was so regimented and so strict, and I still am, but like there was a period of like 2.5 years, 3 years where I had my elbow, my knee, and my foot in like back-to-back seasons. I would take pregame naps in the hyperbaric chamber. I would ice bath. I would diet, everything I could possibly do, supplements, whatever it was, and I was still getting injured.
You couldn't get your break.
Yeah, and this was the 3rd year in a row, and I remember in the playoffs, we were in Utah, and I had to go get an MRI like during the end of the game, and the doctor came in and told me what happened, and I just broke down. Like, just couldn't take it. I can't remember if it was I think it's maybe my agent that was there. And I just was like, why? I'm doing everything I possibly can.
Yeah.
I've spent so much money. I'm trying so hard. It'd be one thing if I just was like, I'm not gonna work out. Like, I'll just play, whatever. And like, you get hurt and you're just like, okay, I didn't do anything to prepare. But I was doing so much to prevent that, and it just kept happening that it really got to me. But I snapped out of that pretty quickly, and you have to just throw yourself into rehab and just commit everything to it. And
What was the kind of when you were at your lowest? Like, what are you doing? What are you, thinking about in that period?
It was really just that. It was just the why. Like,
Yeah.
why am I doing all this, and this is still happening? Like, should I just cut out? Should I just stop? Should I stop caring as much and not spend time sleeping in this hyperbaric chamber when I could be out playing with my kids? You know what I mean? Like, should I stop sacrificing so much just to try to prolong or be healthy or do all this stuff? And that was just a low point of thinking. I clearly bounced back from that fairly quickly, but in that moment, that was the thoughts that was running through my head.
And how do you go about reorienting the thought process? Because I read somewhere you said, you used to get really down on yourself about injuries, but then you started to realize if I wasn't making all these sacrifices and doing all this stuff,
Probably wouldn't be playing today.
right?
Yeah, so, I mean, you sort of, I remember a certain point, I think it was maybe that night when I woke up after that injury, that I was like, all right, stop feeling sorry for yourself. You still get to, play this game, you still get to do the things you love. I'm gonna figure out when I'm gonna have surgery, I'm gonna start rehab, I'm gonna stay on my diet, I'm gonna do all this stuff, and I'm gonna get back. Like I said, it was just a momentary low point of thinking. But I don't know, it's just for me, fortunately, it's always been somewhat easy to sort of bounce back into that mindset.
Yeah.
Just because I just still want to play it, I still want to, get healthy and be good. So.
But you have said before you've gone to see a therapist. Like,
for
what
sure.
caused you to make the decision to do that?
It's like a sports therapist or a therapist in general.
Yeah, either or.
Sports therapy, it's kind of started early on. When I first got into the league, maybe my second year, teams started to have the idea to have sports. It's more like performance therapists.
Okay.
You know what I mean? People to help you with your mindset or visualization and all that. But then I sort of realized the importance of just like talking to somebody. I was talking to a friend who has gone to therapy for a long time, and a very well-adjusted person, and somebody who I don't consider, like, you know, for some reason, especially growing up, like mental health was such a taboo subject.
Right.
That you kind of like, when you don't know too much about a subject, you kind of think it's not for you, it's for people with a certain thing.
But then after you go, you realize like everybody would benefit from having
for
somebody
sure.
completely
For sure.
objective.
Just somebody you could just tell things that you don't really tell anybody else.
Right.
When I decided to do that, I had just talked to my friend who was like, oh, I was talking about this in therapy, and I was like, man, he like always talks about like how he like was, you know, telling his therapist this or whatever it was, and I was like, maybe I should like just give this a try, like talk to somebody who like can literally just like hear your thoughts. And a different friend also told me that going to therapy isn't about going and telling somebody your problems and then giving you the answers. It's about going and telling them your problems and then them helping you arrive at the answers. And when I heard that, I was like, oh, like that makes so much sense. Because then, you know, it's just nice to have a sounding board always in life. And those two things kind of put together made me realize I should go.
In what ways have you found it helpful to you?
It's honestly just like a stress reliever. Like you just get to talk about some things that you sometimes don't want to burden other people with, you know? And it's just like a sounding board. It was exactly what I thought it was going to be going into it, which was very reassuring. I think that's like the best way I can describe it.
Just another tool to have at your disposal.
Yeah, exactly.
Meditation.
That's a
I
tough one.
understand you started to get a little more open or interested in it once you realized it doesn't have to be this long time every time you do it.
Yeah, so I interviewed Andy Puttycombe on my podcast. He's a co-founder of Headspace. And my conversation with him sort of opened my eyes to it. Not that I was closed off to it, I just would like try, and I'm like, I can't do this. This is like, I'm supposed to do this for 30 minutes or 20 minutes. And he was like, just start with a minute. You know what I mean? And in your mind, before you do that, you're like, okay, I'm not gonna meditate for a minute. That's like a disgrace to meditation everywhere. So that just sort of made me feel like whatever I could do was like enough. You know what I mean? When it came to meditation. I sort of started there, and then I sort of switched to like trying to just practice like more mindfulness, and just making sure that I'm like, you know, acknowledging things in my life, like thankful for things in my life, you know, every morning, like before I go about my day.
Switching gears here completely, talking about the Clippers some and their prior owner, Donald Sterling. I want to take you back to before you were drafted. It becomes clear you're likely going to be going to the Clippers. You go to Google to start searching, and what do you find out?
Most of the things that came up on Google, when the Clippers said they were going to draft me, I searched the whole franchise, really, and then, you know, you go down a rabbit hole on Wikipedia, and you're on Donald Sterling's page, and you get to like the section where it talks about lawsuits, and you're like, whoa, like this is it's a long list of lawsuits and things that have been brought against him. And at like 19 years old, you're kind of just like, all right, well that sucks. But
well, because wasn't one of the first things that came up when you Googled Donald Sterling? Was one of the first things that came up was Donald Sterling is racist.
Oh yeah. Or maybe it was like an article or something. But at like 19, when your whole dream is to play in the NBA, and like you're like, oh, this team is going to give me a chance to do that, you're just kind of like, all right, whether I should have, you know, stood up and said something or made a big deal about it. It's just like I wasn't mentally or emotionally mature enough to do that at the time.
You kind of feel like a cog in the
You're
wheel.
just
Yeah,
kind of
right.
like, all right, let me just do what I'm supposed to do.
Tell about the white party.
Yeah, I've told this story sometimes.
I know, it's a pretty remarkable story.
Yeah, so like when I first got drafted, and this had to be on 4th of July.
And almost comical now. But
Oh yeah, for sure.
Probably
comical
not
now.
then. Yeah.
Miserable at the time.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, Donald Sterling wants you to come to his white party. And I was like, that makes sense. So they're like, you have to wear all white. So I remember I had to like go find some like white shorts that you could wear to a party, white t-shirt. I just show up and I'm by myself in this car, like pulling up to this house in Malibu, and then somebody from the team meets me there, and then like, okay, Donald wants to come out, and he comes out with like, I don't know, like a group of 6 people, and they're all in white. Donald Sterling's in all black. And I was like, that's okay, all right. So then he like comes up, introduces himself, and then literally walks me around the party for what felt like an hour and a half, like by the hand. He would walk me around, and he would like introduce me to the people at his party, and he'd be like, this is Blake, our fabulous new draft pick. I would just kind of like shake everybody's hands and talk and do that thing, and then he would grab my hand and he'd lead me to the next person. And again, I'm 19 or 20, and I was just kind of like, all right, like here we go.
Right.
I didn't know what to do. Like this
Right.
guy ose the team. Every conversation was pretty much the same thing. I remember one guy looked at me as I was walking off, and he just goes, just keep smiling, man. It'll be over soon. I was like, thanks. I appreciate it.
Tell about the Baron Davis incident when like Sterling was sitting on the sidelines and.
Oh, yeah. Man, what was that over? It was just over, like, Sterling had just gone nuts on him.
And this is during a game.
Oh, yeah,
right?
it was during a game. I think Baron maybe at the free throw line or something. Sterling was like just going nuts on him during a game about playing bad or something like that. I wasn't even playing it. This was when I was sitting out. And at the time, the arenas were, like, for Clippers games, it was like half empty or half full, however you want to look at it. So it was like very quiet in there. And I couldn't really hear exactly what he was saying, but it was just kind of like obvious that this was weird.
Did you talk to Baron after that?
Oh, I think Baron like spoke about it, but honestly, man, the sad thing is there was just kind of like, yeah, like that was, that was crazy, but that's like, that's Donald Sterling.
Explain how everything changed once Balmer became owner.
Donald Sterling just like, I think he liked owning the team, but he didn't care whether we were, whether it was good or not. I think he was just kind of like, I own this team. I get to go to these games sometimes, and it's a thing. Balmer like cares about winning, and loves basketball, loves sports, and when in any organization at the top, like if things are the right way at the top, then that'll like seep down, and that's gives you a chance to be a good organization or a good company, whatever it is. And one owner went out, and one owner came in, you could just tell the difference, right away. It wasn't just like overnight, but things like slowly changed, over the course of the next like 4, 5 years, whatever it was.
A lot of the staff was no longer on temp contracts, right?
Yeah, exactly. When people feel secure and people feel wanted and feel like they're being appreciated, like, it makes people work harder. It makes people enjoy coming to work, and that's what changed.
The trade. Take me through everything you remember from the lengths to which the Clippers went about convincing you to re-sign, including the Staples Center where there was the visual depiction of your story.
It was crazy. We walked in, a lot of my teammates were there. Obviously good to see them, but I also felt bad. I was like, sorry guys, you didn't have to come to this. They had like different phases of my life, like my childhood, like big, giant, blown up pictures of like my childhood, like certain things from my childhood. I had this like green Huffy bike that there was like a picture like on the internet somewhere. There was like a green Huffy bike there, and like basketball, a little tight goal, like you turn the corner and it's like high school, and like my high school like state championship trophies and medals and pictures again, and then at University of Oklahoma, and then early on in the league, you kind of like walk through like memory lane, I guess. And then you came out to the court, and there was like a big couch like set up, and I sat there with my kids and my family, and it was a jersey retirement ceremony. And then Sandra Day sang "Rise Up" with like a choir.
A jersey retirement ceremony. As you were retiring as a lifelong Clipper.
As a lifelong Clipper, a fake jersey retirement. She sang that song, and I was like, wow, that was nuts. And then we went in and like talked about, we got down to like the actual business of it. But yeah, it was nuts. It was like one of the craziest things I've seen, for sure.
At what point in that were you like pretty much sold?
Honestly, man, like that stuff, I'm appreciative of like how much thought went into it and how detailed they got and all that. But for me, it was about talking about like what's the future, what's going to happen, what are we going to do to like try to win and so that's when that happened. Like when we sat down and had like a real like business talk.
Probably had to make it hurt all the more when 6 months later you find out you're traded. How did it make you feel, kind of given that context?
I mean, I understand for sure. Through a business point of view, I completely understand. A team wants to go a certain way. They had a plan. They wanted to win a championship, very quickly, and they didn't think that was going to happen, with me there. And I totally get that. I just, the only thing is, we kind of wish it had gone about, they'd gone about it a different way.
How so?
Just like, I guess the respect of having, letting your agent know so that like, hopefully both parties can work out a deal that they both want, it both works for them.
Because you found out from just kind of a friend.
Yeah,
in the
a friend had told me, and I called my agent, and he was like, let me, and I don't mean to make my agent sound like he doesn't know what's going on. He does.
And he's like family.
Yeah, he's like family to me, and he's a great agent. And he's very well connected and
Right.
very well respected. And I called him to kind of tell him, hey, this is what I heard. He was like, oh, let me call. Nobody picked up. He called me back. He's like, that was weird. Normally he answers my call every time. And I was like, all right, that's weird. So I had to go into the facility that morning to like do a lift. And I had called the GM as well, or whatever his title is, and no response, nothing in return. Like an hour and a half later, and I was like, yeah, I'll go up there and just check, and never forget that conversation. And then maybe an hour after that, I was traded.
So you said never forget that conversation. I mean, it had to be the height of awkwardness, but
Oh,
take
yeah,
me
for
through.
sure.
So you walk up there.
I went up there and I was like, hey, to his assistant, he's a good dude. I was like, hey, is he in there? And he's like, I think he's in a meeting. And he looked a little shook when I walked up there. I'm like, tell him I want to talk to him. And so he goes in there and he comes out like a little bit later and he's like, hey, yeah, let's go in here to this other office. And he goes to open the door and it's locked. So it's just me and him. He turns to his assistant. He's like, can you get the keys for this? And he's like, yeah, the assistant like scurries off. So it's just me and him. And he's like, how's it going? I was like, you tell me. And he's like, we're standing there, just an awkward, just a moment of awkwardness for I don't know, a good 20 seconds. He's like, all right, let's just go in my office. And then I think the kid was coming back with, not the kid, the guy was coming back with his keys, and we just went into his office anyway. And I was like, I just want to know like what's going on. And he's, he starts with like a player of your caliber. And I was like, well, like, come on. I don't need all that. I just want to know, And he's like, you'll be the first call. And I was like, all right, I appreciate it. And I was driving home, went to pick up my kids. I saw Woj's tweet that says the Clippers and Pistons are finalizing a deal. Send Blake Griffin. But also, my friend was giving me updates the whole time. He's like, hey, it's at the 1 yard line. And I was like, all right. I got home, we were playing on the trampoline, and I saw that tweet, and I was like, oh, wow, all right. And that was it. So that's what I mean. Like, I totally get it from their like standpoint and a business standpoint. Like, you want to move on from a guy, it's completely normal. It was just like everything about it that, it's tough. But again,
Because you had history there and
yeah,
long-term relationship, right? Well, I know Steve Balmer and Doc Rivers both called you afterwards. You didn't answer. What's the likelihood that relationship can be repaired?
Yeah, I mean, probably can. Mostly the reason I didn't answer is like the way, again, just how it happened, and then I was with my kids, and I was like, in this moment, like, my phone was just blowing up, and I was with my kids. We were like on the trampoline, we were playing this game, we were in the house, we were doing whatever, and I just like I wasn't picking up, and then after that, I was just kind of like, am I gonna call him back and talk about it? But no, I mean, I don't. It's not like this thing where I'm just like, no, I'll never speak to speak to these people again.
Right.
It's just like, at the time, I don't think I was ready to do that. Whether that was right or wrong, I'm not saying I was right in thinking that, but that's just how I felt at the time. And again, it was with my kids, and that's a special time for me.
Kevin Durant, explain his involvement in recruiting you to the Nets.
I don't really want to say it was like recruiting. It really wasn't. Once I was figuring out a deal with Detroit, it was just, I was kind of weighing my options. I've known Kevin and James and Kyrie for a long time, and we've like worked out together before, and we spoke on text. That was really it.
As a player, isn't that everything you want? If one of the team's star players like to know they want you to be there, and like that's,
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
I mean, you're responding
I
like it's a
don't mean
negative,
to,
and I feel like isn't that positive?
I don't mean to sound like not appreciative of it, but I somebody asked me that, and they were like, "Who recruited you the hardest?" And I was like, "Oh, I was just like, I guess Kevin."
Yeah.
Like it wasn't like he was like flying to my house,
Right.
like come. It wasn't like that type of recruitment. It was just like, hey, like, come bring your ass to Brooklyn. Let's try to make a run at this thing. That again, yeah. When a player of his caliber like says something like that, like it means something for sure.
How well do you remember playing him in high school?
I look back at that game and I'm like, man, this is awful basketball. Just like no one's playing defense. Like everybody's just kind of like running around. But that was like AU basketball at the time. Like we played like 10 games in 2 days. So you knew he was going to be this good.
Did you?
I mean, maybe not this good. I mean,
But you knew he was
going to be a
something.
superstar.
Yeah.
He's one of the best players to ever play. I think it's like his God-given talent, along with just his true, just absolute love for basketball. Anything and everything basketball. He just loves it. Loves to play basketball, and that's always refreshing from like one of the biggest superstars of all time. It's just like he's all about basketball.
And how is that different from
Well,
maybe other?
I haven't truly been around like LeBron in the same way, or some of these other guys, but like
It's not every day though that somebody like that's all basketball 24/7.
I love basketball.
Yeah.
Kevin just like his favorite thing to do, and so is mine, but he will play all day if you let him. He'll play all day, and he watches basketball. He loves to talk basketball. He'll watch like high school kids play. Like, you know what I mean? He's just like, he gives back to the game, and I think we all do, but like you can tell he's at his pure like happiness when it's about hoops, and it's just refreshing because it's just that. There's no like fluff, there's no like PR gimmicks, there's no anything else with him. It's just that's who he is.
Your brother Taylor. Tell about when you guys, as kids, were on the bleachers and he convinced you to jump off like 10 feet.
It was like it sounds crazy, but my dad being our coach, like we would go to the gym with him when we were young, and the bleachers would be pushed back, in high school gyms where they can come out.
Yeah.
And then for some reason, like the big like pole vaulting mats that you like fall onto were in the gym that day. So we like pushed him down, we pushed him by the bleachers, and we would climb up to the top of the bleachers and jump down. And one of us was like, hey, let's have a race, see who can get up and down 3 times the fastest. So I was wearing socks, so we jumped down, and we're like neck and neck, and I'm like so competitive. I'm like, I have to beat him. So I like climb up to the top and kind of like jump to the top and go to push off, and sock just, and I just completely missed the mat. Like my upper body kind of like lands on the mat, and my hand lands on the ground, and I like get up, and I'm like checking my legs, and they're fine, and I like move my wrist, and it hurts so bad. I didn't tell anybody for like a day and a half, and then finally, like my mom, I think, noticed that like I couldn't do anything with my right hand or my left hand, and she was like, "All right, we got to go to the hospital." But I was just terrified to tell my parents.
And
that that's
you broke your arm?
Yeah,
right?
I broke my wrist. Yeah,
Your wrist.
Broke my wrist.
Having an older brother at some point made you want to do everything better than him, right?
Yeah. That was like the fuel for my competitiveness.
And how so?
Just because he was good at, he seemed like he was just good at everything, and I don't know. I just always wanted to just be better. And being 3 years younger, like I wasn't. He was just better at everything. He was bigger, faster, stronger. He would just do everything better. So it just like was like this constant like you talk about that person to chase, like he was like my person to chase always, just always. And that just sort of like fueled my competitiveness for years and years and years.
And he's now your manager. I understand from talking to him that you were pretty delicate in pitching that to him and conscious of the time in which you proposed the possibility. Why?
Just because my brother's very, very smart and could probably, go.
You could do a million things.
Yeah, he could do a ton of things, and I don't say manager. He's like a business partner with me because we run so much stuff together. He helps me manage, things, but he's not my manager. He's a business partner, and I don't know. I just like I knew that he could, once he retired, he could go do whatever he wanted, and it was important for us to like get our family foundation going, get the AAU program that we played for, get that up and running. It was Team Griffin
in Oklahoma.
In Oklahoma, and he's got that to an unbelievable place, and been able to help a lot of kids and give back like somebody gave to us. He's heading our family ventures, all of our investment stuff, and just absolutely killing it. So I just wanted to be cognizant of like, I understand, what he is capable of, but I would be, greatly appreciative if he like would join me in trying to tackle all these things.
Because he played professional basketball for a long time, and then you talked to him kind of at the time where he was in the process of deciding on next chapter.
Yeah. I mean, we'd had conversations. I could tell he was sort of like thinking about being done playing, and we'd had conversations, and I'd always envisioned that, like us working a little bit more closely together on a lot of this stuff, especially family stuff.
And what's it like working together?
It's amazing because he just like can make decisions that he knows that he's like very confident that I feel the same way. And even if I didn't, like I would probably just trust his instinct. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because there's nobody that knows you better, or who's going to have your back more.
Yeah, exactly. And all these decisions he makes are for us, for us as a family. And again, that's why I say he's a business partner.
How do you go about sourcing investment opportunities?
I mean, that's a great question. I mean, I don't think there's like an exact like right and wrong answer for that. Like for us, I think we look at it several different things. We look at, the obvious, like, do you believe in like the product? And two, do you believe in the people that are behind the product, like the management team, the executive team that's behind this product? And like, this could be on a big scale or a very small scale. Will this change people's lives? Will this change like the world in a way? And that can mean like just by how somebody does something, or in a big scale. And those are kind of three things that I always look at. He might give you some better insight because he's seeing more deals and he's making a lot of decisions. But that's how I got involved in some of the companies now that have been successful early on. It was sort of those three key principles, I guess.
It has to be an exhausting process just evaluating these companies, even if you aren't intimately involved in every step. I mean, it's a huge time investment in and of itself. Yeah,
there's a lot to it, but I also have really come to enjoy it because it's you just like learn about what else is happening, like who's pushing the envelope, who's has this idea, or like what could possibly be next. And you don't know those things unless you get to look at some of these deals, and that's a lot of fun for me.
How did SpaceX come about?
That came through Patrikoff Company, who we've worked closely with, and my brother now, I guess, heads like one of their offices, their LA office, for them now, and it was just like it was just one of those things where like obviously like SpaceX, something like that could change the world, and Elon Musk, it's a person who you just believe in as somebody who's creating and moving the envelope forward in so many different spaces.
I mean, although it can't be cheap, though, because of that.
Right,
Yeah.
for sure. But it's just one of those things where it was sort of just like for me and my brother, it was kind of a no-brainer as to like, this is something that's very, very cool, and like we can't miss this opportunity.
And you've met Elon before, right?
I actually haven't
prior
met
to
him.
the investment.
I haven't met him in person.
Okay.
When the Tesla first came out, a guy who was like a Clipper season ticket holder, I was sitting next to him one time. I think it was at a season ticket holder event, and he was like, "Oh, I just got the new Tesla," and I was like, "Oh man, I want one of those so bad." This was like when I first got my Tesla, like other Tesla driver, you would wave at each other,
Right.
You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
like nobody had a Tesla,
Right.
And
there was
I was
a
like,
waiting list.
I was like a 2-year waiting
Yeah.
list. I was like, "How'd you get it?" And he goes, "Oh, I'm friends with Elon." And I was like, "Oh, okay, all right, cool." And I was like, "Man, I want one." He's like, "Do you want me to see if I can get you one?" I was like, "That would be awesome." And so he put me on email with Elon, and I said, like, I want a gray Model S, whatever, and literally I think I had one within like a month or maybe less, which is great for my impatient,
Right.
impatient self. But yeah, so I've never actually met Elon, but yeah, I was on email with him once. So
Hyperice, what you bought in at and what it's valued at now.
I just did a sweat equity deal with Hyperice. That was like one of those things where I was like, I was always icing my knees, Ice was huge, or is huge, especially when he first came into the league, and I was like looking for a better way to like do that on my own or more efficiently. This is again during the lockouts where you didn't have the ability to go into the facility every day and just get these bags of ice that were made for us and wrapped on. I thought it was a really cool idea. Anthony Katz, the founder, was just a really interesting guy who's just kind of forward thinking. And I remember we were sitting, after a couple of years, we were sitting in Vegas at USA Basketball, and we went to dinner, and he was talking about like, what do you really use that you like? And I told him a couple of things, and I told him, I was like, I use this machine, and it was like the old school version of like the Hyperice Hypervolt. Like Hypervolt is like one of the best selling products for them now. I was like, I use this machine before every game. It'd be cool if you could do like a better version of that. And then 5 years later, he came out with one, and they've just gotten better and better and better and better. And now it's, I try not to think about it too much, but now it's potentially going to be a great thing, and something that like in a small way again changes people's lives, or hopefully does.
Right.
Hopefully makes people healthier. Hopefully helps people exercise longer or feel better or whatever it is.
I mean, you're being humble in the great thing. I mean, it's $10 million valuation, and now it could be pushing $1 billion.
Yeah, hopefully pushing $1 billion, hopefully over, but we'll see. I remember hearing stories about players taking equity in companies instead of doing endorsement deals, and at the time I was just like, I don't really, want another endorsement deal. I'd love to have equity in this thing that I think is cool, and never imagined in a million years that like it would get to this point. But it was obviously, you're always hopeful when you take equity in something that it would. But it's been cool, and it's kind of opened my eyes to the investment world.
And what about real estate?
We've done a decent amount of real estate, both actually commercial and residential.
What do you enjoy more?
I think, like, I love how, like, I watch like HGTV sometimes. You know, like I also like touring houses. Like when I was like looking for a new house, like even if there was one that I was like, I would still just go see it just because I like seeing houses.
Right.
So me personally, I find residential real estate really interesting. I think Taylor would probably tell you commercial, which makes more sense. The more logical thinker is sort of me just being like, oh, I like houses.
Yeah.
But we've done a decent amount in both, and they're both very interesting to me, and been fortunate to come across like some really cool opportunities.
Before you found success, how did you find smart ways to save money?
I was always like, just like naturally good at saving money. I never spent money. I would like save up all my money and like buy one thing. Like my brother would always like save money and like buy clothes. He'd buy shoes. He'd buy, just like things that he wanted. And I would just like sit on my money. I would never like spend. I'm talking like allowance or like
Right.
chore money. Like
Right.
working in the trophy shop. Like we would get paid a little bit. And I would just like save it for nothing. and then I would probably buy something stupid. Not like blow it all, but I'd just buy something stupid that I didn't really need.
What's anything you remember getting?
I bought when I was really young, I bought like a children's compound bow because it's like a compound bow, like a bow and arrow.
Yeah.
It was like a compound bow because I just like thought it was like really cool, and I mean I used it for a while, but like that was something that was just like probably didn't need to spend your money on that, Probably could have just bought some clothes or shoes or something. Should have followed my brother's footsteps.
And your mom, though, both when you were a kid, I understand,
yeah.
taught you about budgeting, and then once you got into your career, was still involved too, right?
Yeah. So when we were kids, we would have these envelopes, and it would be like savings, spending, and it was like within spending, it was like, call it like entertainment or whatever, and then one would be like food, or like, it was checking, savings, entertainment, like food or something like that. So if we wanted to go out to eat like on our own, this was when we were a little older, not on our own, but with friends, like we'd take this like food part, or if I wanted to go to a movie, I'd do this, or like buy something with this. And then so I would always have to put, like if I made $8 working in the trophy company for a couple hours or whatever it was, then I would just have to like divvy it up, and put it in the right envelope. And that budgeting like sort of just like taught me from an early age, like this is how it works. Like you don't just like get money and spend it. You put some aside, you have some for like a rainy day, you have some for what you want to do. And then, when I first got into the league, my mom would be on calls with my financial manager every Wednesday for like 2.5 years,
Really?
maybe 3 years, yeah.
Why?
Just because she wanted to make sure, not that she was like truly like, why, she wouldn't like ever call me and be like, why'd you spend this? She just wanted to make sure that nobody was taking advantage of us. And again, another reason I'm very appreciative of what my parents do.
Best advice you could ever give on the financial front would be what?
I always say to guys, like young guys, especially in the league, besides like the obvious of like, hey, let's like, don't go spend all your money, like, just save and like wait till that second contract before you buy something. I always say to guys, like, have a checks and balances within your worlds. Like make sure that like what your financial advisor is doing. I have friends who, teammates, friends who just have gotten so much money taken from them, whether it's by a relative or by a money manager or whoever it was, just because sometimes things like slip through the cracks, and not just because they weren't paying attention at all, but like, if somebody's going to steal from you, they're going to try to hide it. So you got to be on it.
Worst financial decision you ever made?
Worst financial decision I ever made? Like a certain investment, but like, I don't really look at it that way because it was like an opportunity. There was something at the time that I believed in, and it just didn't work out. So,
and if you put the ball in play enough on the investment
yeah,
front,
exactly. Like
making smart decisions, something will hit.
The ones that hit, like, take care of the ones that don't, and that's something I really learned. I'm not sure about the worst financial decision I ever made.
Fatherhood. We were talking earlier about your parents and growing up, and a little bit about being a parent yourself. What's fatherhood taught you?
Fatherhood's a really crazy thing because it not only increases like the love in your life, but it also like increases your capacity to love, which is like kind of a crazy idea because you think, you love your parents, you love your friends, you love your significant other, whatever it is, but like the love you have for your child like is just so all-encompassing that it kind of sort of, at least it opened up my eyes to that and my world to that. It also just like keeps me like so, like, I guess grounded in a way. Just like seeing what my kids truly care about. They never care if you like play bad or like the world cares about. They're just like, play with me. They both have like very different qualities and very different personalities are very different, and you learn different things from both of them. It's like always just like so refreshing when you just like have had enough with like the world and you're just with your kids,
I don't know if you know this, but at any point in the conversation where we talk about family, you get a little emotional.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
What is it about that?
I don't know. I just like they like they mean everything to you or to me, and like I know I wouldn't be where I am today without them.
How about the most difficult part of fatherhood?
For me, especially right now, is like being away. Whether I was in Detroit or even like when I was in LA, you go on like a 2-week road trip and you come back and like I remember when my daughter was like just born, like I missed like her rolling over for the first time or like her first step or whatever it is. Like you just miss it. If you're gonna be on the road traveling, you're gonna miss things, and that's like the toughest part is just being away.
What would you like for your kids?
Just to be happy. People always ask like if I'm gonna make my son play basketball or like make him play sports, and like I'm not going to. I think sports is great for kids. It teaches teamwork, it teaches working with other people and being around different personalities and sometimes how to lead, but I just want them to be happy, like do whatever they want.
What about for yourself on the kind of personal front?
Honestly, the same thing, to be honest. Once I'm done playing basketball, I hope to have like a lot of different things set up to where I can just step into those and enjoy what I'm doing. But like, to me, like you can't really put a price tag on happiness and truly doing what you want in life.
You see getting married at some point?
I don't know, man. I like kind of go back and forth, think about it sometimes, and there's times when I'm just like, you know what, I'm good. Like, got my 2 kids, and I'll just like kind of they'll be my thing. And then sometimes I'm like, nah, like, it'll happen. Like, just like I'm just not in a rush. I'm not like forcing it right now. I enjoy where I'm at in life.
How crazy is it to think in your early 30s now, in any other career, you would just be kind of entering the prime of your career, and this is the time where folks start to talk about retirement. Isn't that whole dynamic strange, just considering how young the guy is?
It's something I've thought about for a long, long time. I mean, I remember when we were at this like rookie transition program early on, they're talking about the average career is like 3.5 years, and I was like, whoa, like I could be done like so quickly in the NBA. I think that's the beauty of the modern athlete. The athlete today is much more aware of that and much more forward thinking and has planned and not everybody, but a lot of guys have. And like I said, I have certain things set up now to where when I'm retired, I'll have things to do. I'll have other careers and other things to put my time towards.
But NBA related is not of interest to you, from what I understand, right?
I think once I'm done playing basketball, I don't think I'll seek like a job in the NBA. I'll be around basketball, like if my son wants to play or whoever, if anybody, I'm always willing to like help if I can, or if I see something or whatever it may be, but and try to give back to especially kids. But I don't know, man, after traveling and being in the NBA and just having that life for a certain amount of time, I think I'm just ready to be be a little bit more in one place, I guess.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, man. It's fun.